It looks like Marjorie Taylor Greene is not the only former MAGA faithful to learn the lesson that everybody in Trump's orbit eventually learns, that loyalty to Trump is a one-way street. So here's what just happened. Trump used his very first veto of his second term, but it was on a bill called the Finish the Arkansas Valley Conduit Act, which passed unanimously in both the House and the Senate, and importantly, was introduced by Lauren Boebert. It would fund a pipeline project bringing clean drinking water to 39 communities on Colorado's eastern plains. So again, introduced by Lauren Boebert, passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. So why would Trump veto legislation introduced by his political ally and passed by Congress by unanimous consent? The answer might be in Lauren Boebert's response. She wrote, quote, "President Trump decided to veto a completely non-controversial bipartisan bill that passed both the House and the Senate unanimously. Why? Because nothing says America first like denying clean drinking water to 50,000 people in southeast Colorado, many of whom enthusiastically voted for him in all three elections. I must have missed the rally where he stood in Colorado and promised to personally derail critical water infrastructure projects. My bad, I thought the campaign was about lowering costs and cutting red tape. But hey, if this administration wants to make its legacy blocking projects that deliver water to rural Americans, that's on them. I'm going to continue fighting for Colorado and standing up for our rural communities, our farmers, and every family that deserves safe, reliable drinking water without decades more delay. And I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with political retaliation for calling out corruption and demanding accountability."
Stop right there. Let's be absolutely clear about what Lauren Boebert just said. She didn't hint at it. She didn't suggest it. She directly accused Trump of political retaliation because she supported releasing the Epstein files. That line, "I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with political retaliation," is political speak for, "I know exactly why you did this." She's calling Trump out for weaponizing government power to punish her for voting for transparency on his pedophile friend Jeffrey Epstein. And here's what makes this so damning. This wasn't a controversial vote. The bill passed unanimously in both the House and Senate. Unanimously. That means every single Democrat and Republican voted for clean drinking water for 50,000 people in Colorado. And Trump vetoed it anyway. The only thing that changed between when this bill passed and when Trump vetoed it was Lauren Boebert signing onto the Epstein files discharge petition. That's it. That's the variable. And Trump is so desperate to hide those files that he's willing to deny clean water to American families, including Trump voters in rural Colorado. This isn't governance. This is a mob boss sending a message. Cross me on Epstein, and I'll make your constituents suffer. That's not a president. That's a tyrant.
Americans deserve leadership that puts people over politics. This is not the last Southeast Colorado will hear from me on this critical infrastructure project. Now, you might have caught the line where she says, "I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with political retaliation for calling out corruption and demanding accountability." What she's referring to is the fact that she was not only one of the 4 Republicans to sign on to the Epstein discharge petition in the House, which of course enabled the full vote that would ultimately lead to the law's passage, but even when the White House summoned her into the Situation Room to pressure her to take her name off that file's discharge petition, she didn't bend. According to the New York Times, top officials met in the White House Situation Room on Wednesday with Representative Lauren Boebert, a Colorado Republican who is backing the effort to force a House vote on whether to demand the release of the files. She was summoned to sit down with top Justice Department and FBI officials, according to 2 people familiar with the matter. One of the people said the session included Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel. Both people spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to comment on the private discussions. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, confirmed that the meeting had taken place, calling it an example of transparency and how administration officials are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns.
This is absolutely Orwellian. The White House press secretary just called summoning a member of Congress to the Situation Room to pressure her into removing her name from a transparency petition an example of transparency. Let that sink in. The New York Times reported that Lauren Boebert was summoned to meet with Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel in the White House Situation Room. That's not a casual meeting. The Situation Room is where you discuss national security crises and military operations. It's designed to be intimidating. And why was she summoned there? To pressure her to remove her name from the Epstein files discharge petition. The Attorney General and the FBI Director took time out of their day to try to convince a member of Congress to help Trump bury evidence about his relationship with a convicted pedophile and sex trafficker. Think about what that means. Trump's entire Justice Department apparatus was deployed to protect Jeffrey Epstein's secrets, not to investigate crimes, not to prosecute traffickers, to suppress information about Trump's connection to Epstein. And here's what makes this even more disturbing. Boebert didn't cave. She walked into the center of power, got pressured by the Attorney General and FBI Director, and came out still supporting transparency. Thomas Massie specifically praised her for that. He said she sustained the pressure and stayed solid. So Trump had to retaliate another way. He couldn't remove her from Congress. He couldn't directly punish her politically. So he found the most petty, vindictive thing he could do: veto a water infrastructure bill that her constituents desperately need. This is what authoritarianism looks like in practice. You use every lever of government power to protect yourself and punish dissent. And when legal pressure doesn't work, you hurt innocent people to send a message. That's not American governance. That's how dictators operate.
Ah, yes, because nothing says transparency quite like summoning members of Congress to a closed-door meeting with top Justice Department brass to be pressured into removing your name from a discharge petition so that Trump can continue to suppress the files. The definition of transparency. In fact, Caroline Leavitt went on to say this.
Government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
But given your interest in transparency, Caroline, why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That's a defining factor of transparency. Having discussions with members of Congress about various issues, and I'm not going to detail conversations that took place in the Situation Room, in the press briefing room.
To answer Leavitt's question, doesn't that show transparency? No. I'm sorry, but what the fuck are we doing here? Does it show transparency to try to get a member of Congress to remove her name to help you bury the Epstein files? No. That is the opposite of transparency. That is literal secrecy. I understand that we're in a world where words don't mean anything anymore and up is down and black is white, but dear God, at this point, the Trump administration is just playing their supporters for absolute fools. Either they're morons or they think all of us are. Take all the time you need with that one. And of course, the impact of Boebert's actions here were widely felt, including by Trump, as evidenced here.
He's calling it totally pointless exercise and completely moot. What do you make of his comments? Do you agree with those?
Well, the White House spent a lot of effort in the midst of a shutdown to stop a totally pointless exercise that's completely mute. And by the way, I got to give credit to Lauren Boebert to walk into the White House, the center of power, the free world, really, and to sustain that and to come back out and to be solid. And also to Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene. There was all the speculation that they might take their names off, and they never did. So it's not a hoax. It's not a moot point. It is a very serious thing. There are 1,000 victims, and there are survivors who have had a press conference with Ro Khanna and I, and that's what we're fighting for, justice for them.
And let's not pretend that Trump did not feel the sting of that move, especially as Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna ran a victory lap and invoked Lauren Boebert's name specifically. Now, I know what you're thinking. Hold on, Brian. Are you saying that Donald Justice Trump would stoop so low as to retaliate against Lauren Boebert for voting for transparency on the Epstein files by depriving the people of her state, including in districts that voted for him, clean water? Do you really think this champion for the little guy would stoop that low? And to that I say, fuck yes! The only thing more on brand for Donald Trump is if he admitted to it by emblazoning it on a gold plaque and slapping it outside the Oval Office. He 1,000% retaliated because that is how loyalty works in the Trump era. You give him 100% loyalty, and if you relent even 1%, you are persona non grata in Trump world. You are excommunicado. You are dead to him. Which raises the obvious question, why do all of these other sycophants and doormats keep groveling at his feet as if it'll never happen to them? Newsflash, it will. Just ask Michael Cohen, George Papadopoulos, Gordon Sondland, Rex Tillerson, Ronna McDaniel, Mike Pence, Kayleigh McEnany, Mike Pompeo, Rance Priebus, Christopher Wray, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and now Lauren Boebert. Here's a message to the rest of the GOP. You are not special. You will be discarded. It is not a matter of if, but a matter of when. The faster you learn that, the more likelihood there is that you might retain just a shred of your dignity. All of which is a point that Mark Elias made here.
We have seen this over and over again, in that loyalty is only a one-way street. Donald Trump does not have loyalty to anyone. He is only loyal to himself, and yet he demands complete loyalty from others. What is more mind-boggling than that, Brian, is why one after another, none of these people figure it out until it happens to them. Like, right. You would think that right now there'd be a bunch of Republicans in Congress looking at what happened to Marjorie Taylor Greene and being like, that could be me.
Right.
And by the way, she could have looked to what happened to Liz Cheney and said, that could be me, right? And we could go back and go back and go back.
Liz Cheney could look at Ronna McDaniel. Ronna McDaniel could look at Michael Cohen.
Correct.
Michael Cohen could look at Roy Cohn. I mean, it's a never-ending cycle of people. Donald Trump, it's just this trail of discarded people in his wake.
It is. And it is that fact that they are so willing to compromise themselves.
This is the most predictable pattern in American politics, and yet Republicans keep falling for it. Brian and Matus just listed the graveyard of Trump loyalists: Michael Cohen, George Papadopoulos, Gordon Sondland, Rex Tillerson, Mike Pence, Kayleigh McEnany, Ronna McDaniel, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and now Lauren Boebert. Every single one of these people gave Trump their complete loyalty. They defended him when he was indefensible. They lied for him. They covered for him. They sacrificed their reputations. And the second they showed even 1% of independence, Trump discarded them like trash. Michael Cohen went to prison for Trump. Trump abandoned him. Mike Pence almost got killed by a mob Trump sent to the Capitol. Trump said he deserved it. Marjorie Taylor Greene was Trump's most aggressive defender in Congress, called him the greatest president ever. Trump turned on her the moment she questioned something. And here's what's insane. Lauren Boebert didn't even really turn on Trump. She just voted for something Trump himself promised during his campaign. Trump said he would release the Epstein files. He made that a campaign promise. All Boebert did was hold him to that promise. And for that, Trump is punishing 50,000 people in her district. So here's my message to every Republican still groveling at Trump's feet. You are not special. You will be discarded. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when it happens, don't expect sympathy, because you watched it happen to everyone before you and you chose to believe you'd be different. The only question is, what will you have sacrificed by then? Your dignity, your integrity, your constituents' well-being, because Trump is going to take all of that from you, and when he's done, he won't even remember your name. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. And if you haven't figured that out by now, you deserve what's coming.
And to surrender their dignity and surrender their self-worth in order to try to be in his good graces, knowing full well that their time may come, and that their time may come over something like this that they can't even have imagined possible. I mean, I can't believe that Lauren Boebert, when she introduced this bill, and Mike Johnson said, we'll put it on the floor, and Hakeem Jeffries, says, great, all the Democrats are going to support it, right? Like, this bill is now sailing through the House on the way to the Senate. And then the Senate, it sails its way out there. She couldn't possibly have thought that this was going to be the thing that would bite her, that this would be the place where he would draw the line. And yet, for the rest of us, it's completely predictable what was going to happen, because this is how he operates. It is always going to be the thing that is the most petty, the thing that is the most disgraceful, the thing that shows the least human decency that Donald Trump will do. Like, you can always count on him doing the worst thing possible at the worst time to the people in greatest need.
I should note, too, this isn't Trump's only beef with Colorado. He's also seething at the state's leaders for keeping his ally, Tina Peters, who was convicted on charges related to tampering with voting systems after the 2020 election, in prison. Why? Because she was convicted on state charges, which means she goes to state prison. But Trump wants her transferred to federal prison so that he can pardon her. Because remember, the law does not exist for Republicans. Because something law and order. So look, I hope the people of Colorado can see what's happening here, especially those folks who voted for Trump or who live in the 4 Republican districts. Trump is depriving you of clean water, because he's salty that he was forced to live up to his own campaign promise of releasing the Epstein files because he wanted to protect his pedophile friend. He's salty because he thinks that the people who helped him overturn a free and fair election in 2020 should face no accountability for their actions, and he wants to issue pardons that he has no authority to issue. He thinks that he's a king, in power to punish and seek vengeance, not to deliver for his voters or for the Americans that he represents, left, right, and center, but rather to impose his edicts, his will, and crush his opposition, crush any dissent. And the rest of the GOP allows it. That's what you get with Republican governance. Colorado is impacted here, but this is a lesson for the rest of the country. When you vote for Republicans, this is the behavior that takes place. Something to think about as we head into this election year with midterms just around the corner.